One Piece Chapter 1037 spoilers will be in this video, so yeah. Eiichiro Oda came into 2022 with possibly the chapter of the year right off the bat, and of course, I don't actually mean that, as I expect this year to be quite possibly the best year yet in the series, but you can't help but feel like things are getting a bit spicy rather early. Now I just wait for the regular cohorts to yell at the screen, "We're 1,000 chapters in!" I get it, but this is a way to kick off this year, right? So, per usual, one more time, let me warn the newcomers that this video will contain spoilers for the new chapter, so again, you have been warned. Now, for the people that remained, I'm assuming all of you did, right? There are quite a few things we need to discuss, and no, I'm not talking about Kuzan's younger brother making his debut in the manga, but rather the major implications of the dialogue from the Gorosei and Zunisha showing up in Wano. First off, it's a huge shocker, but then again, not really. Why? Well, we've had moments in this arc where we felt like Zunisha could have made an appearance even sooner. In chapter 1014, where Luffy made Kaido feel like a disappointed parent. "It seems like you couldn't be Joy Boy either, my boy." Yeah, I mean, that was just tragic. But Momonosuke reads the journal of Oden and stated that he cannot die for whatever reason that may be. Some speculate this is due to him being the last remaining Kozuki, but it could be a bit deeper than that. So now Luffy proceeds to fall off Onigashima. Nobody thought he was actually going to die other than Kaido maybe, but he was plunging towards his death. Momonosuke is then somehow able to communicate with Luffy, where he then said to tell the others that he would not die. This could be Momonosuke again exhibiting special powers of communication, or it could just be Luffy unlocking another step to figuring out exactly what the voice of all things could be. The key thing before we continue to keep in mind is the awakening. In this arc, awakening has been a topic of conversation in many different areas and meanings, and I'm sure when I mentioned that just now you thought of a devil fruit, which is very relevant by the way, but awakenings in this regard stretch even further. I'm not referencing Luffy at all here. It's not a pun. It might be. For instance, the awakening of Wano, or rather the dawn. What was once shrouded in darkness will come to light. So far, we know there are at least 3 individuals who must not die due to this awakening, Momonosuke and both Dukes, which does tie into their awakenings, albeit a bit temporary. They're Sulong forms. But anyway, enough of this tangent, just providing a bit more contextual information, if not a reminder, but back to us thinking Zunisha can make her way to Wano at some point, because that's where we started, so let's go back to it. This happened in Wano. Momonosuke cried out with a headache, almost identical to that time in Zou when he first started communicating with Zunisha. This did end up being Luffy that had contacted him, but what if Zunisha was contacted as well, even accidentally? This could have occurred at the same time, or whilst Momonosuke was desperately attempting to save the people of Wano, and Zunisha is here to aid him in doing so. I do want us to also keep in mind that we could also be looking at a situation in which this was the destination all along. Now to Zunisha for a bit, because this walking elephant is quite the important figure in this chapter, as this could be the answer to our question. What is the devil fruit that you're talking about? Well, I turn your attention to One Piece chapter 821 and 822, when we find out some key information about our walking elephant country. Funny enough, the cover art for chapter 821 has Luffy looking like a very familiar figure in Wano. Well, the guardian deity that they speak of. Is this a hint that Wano, the center of all things, seemingly was Zunisha'S destination all along? Well, maybe. First, though, Zunisha had been the home for the minks for 1,000 years, and it's even implied that she was not just walking aimlessly and may have a destination and a purpose for this walk. A quick reminder, Momonosuke himself stayed behind to have a conversation with Zunisha about why his voice was able to reach her and her connection to the Kozuki. Something that I also thought about was that this person or this animal that can communicate telepathically just like Momonosuke, do they have the voice of all things, as Luffy did hear her calls as well as Oden and Roger. If we do infer that this person or animal is using the voice of all things, this was certainly a special individual. But quick important backstory on Zunisha. I promise it is important, as this is a quick refresher before I get into speculative territory. So Zunisha, she was sentenced to walk the seas for eternity, and I may be throwing people off by saying she. I just feel like the name Zunisha sounds a bit feminine, so I mean I could be wrong, could be a he, but we're just gonna continue saying she. Anyway, she was sentenced to walk the seas for eternity due to committing a crime and has been carrying out that order since then. What I do find interesting, and this lends to the theory that Momonosuke is indeed an ancient weapon and they're more like Zunisha, is the information we received in regards to the sovereigns being born. Now I'm not saying these two things are directly connected, but this could be how the awakening we mentioned earlier could be happening. Now to the meeting of the sovereigns. Something that was made clear in Fishman Island is that Joy Boy and the ancient weapon Poseidon were supposed to work somewhat in tandem, and Joy Boy failed to uphold his end of the bargain, hence the apology. Now for Momonosuke and whatever he could be, Luffy could be triggering this awakening in him and in Zunisha. His meeting with Momonosuke and their interactions in Zou is eerily similar to Luffy's and Shirahoshi's in Fishman Island. Luffy could not communicate with the Sea Kings directly, but he could hear them and somewhat directed or inspired the actual ancient weapon, Shirahoshi, on what to do. In this scenario, both on Zou and in Wano, Luffy is telling Momonosuke what to communicate to Zunisha and the people of Wano. Again, it's quite possible that Momonosuke's words reached Zunisha as well. Whilst researching this stuff, I must talk about this small panel I stumbled across in chapter 967. It is small, but it's Pedro's conversation with Roger. Take this with a grain of salt, but it's where he was eager to help and do something, and Roger pretty much tells him he's on the waiting list and that eventually everyone gets their time to shine. We then see the words of Roger stating that when it comes around, you can help us, and Pedro responds, okay, I will come to your aid. But at that point, we see a shot of Zunisha, which feels a lot like what's happening right now. It's Zunisha's time to shine, and she is coming to our aid. Poor Pedro, though. These words from Roger turned him into a walking death trap. Not really, but it kind of did. Also, in the same chapter, we have Roger and Odin stating that they felt unnerved whilst being on Zou and that they felt like something was watching them, and then we focus on the whale tree. Now, why is this significant? Well, this could be the center of it all. Keep in mind, Poseidon is able to direct sea kings, and how Zunisha was forced to walk, this could be the result of control via an ancient weapon, along with a devil fruit power. So this whale tree could be where someone is being kept, could be a former sea king, and they could be turned into a human. All these different scenarios are possible. Now, with all this information, this finally turns us to the recent chapter. What the hell is going on? With all the context just provided, the easy answer seems to be Zunisha, and that there was someone who was sentenced to walk, and they actually have a devil fruit power, and that is what the legend is. To break it down a bit easier, the person who was sentenced to walk is actually human, or possibly a giant, and they're using their devil fruit power to control something like Zunisha, an island, and this is because they're being forced to do this as a punishment to a crime. Oh, quick tidbit, in chapter 822 as well, Jack refers to Zunisha as a living legend, which is very odd, I might say, after this chapter, as the Gorosei does say whatever was mentioned before is just a legend, and that it predates even them. But now, where do we go from here, and what actually makes sense? Well, not much, because we're missing key components of information by design, so any theory right now is technically a good theory, but I gotta say, some of these theories even go all the way back to Blackbeard even. We can never forget about that man, especially when it comes to devil fruits, because he knows quite a bit. It's almost funny in hindsight reading CP9's conversation back in chapter 385 about the possibility of eating 2 devil fruits. Okay, so Bluno says the Grand Line scholars already explained the conditions and that the person who ate 2, his body fractured until there was nothing left of it. It's funny, this reminds me of how the Yami returns everything to nothingness, but anyway, since we're on the Yami, it's a really interesting fruit, as it does not have the regular applications of a Logia or even a Paramecia. It almost combines all 3, kinda? Well, we have darkness without invulnerability, but it can absorb attacks. We also have the ability to use gravity, and then the insane ability to completely nullify devil fruit abilities when touched. It almost feels created, or another type altogether, which reminds me of Sugar's devil fruit, which is the Hobby no Mi. Now, when I think of the Hobby no Mi, I'm thinking, okay, this is a very peculiar fruit because it can not only turn you into a toy, but erase your existence and grant eternal youth, or so it seems, because Sugar, her appearance has not changed over the years at all. Those abilities individually are pretty good, but they're all rolled into one devil fruit, somewhat like the Yami no Mi. So when you analyze the dialogue, it could be interpreted as well that the world government of the past hid this entirely different type of devil fruit to protect this one fruit, meaning there could be another type or hybrid types with multiple abilities that were classified incorrectly on purpose. Crazy, I know, but the possibilities based on the information we have are truly endless. Since we are kinda still on Blackbeard, we have to talk about his mission and purpose from what we've seen. He is a devil fruit hunter, and now finally he's ready to make his move on something the world government apparently did not want to use or cannot use. The popular opinion around this is it's an ancient weapon. However, this chapter has opened our eyes to the possibility of this being a devil fruit. We also got to talk about our favorite informant, Shanks the Snitch. I'm joking. But Shanks did go to warn the world government of a certain pirate, and based on who's reports, that's a weird thing to say, Shanks is somewhat of a devil fruit hunter himself. Did Shanks actually figure out the pirate who ate this fruit? But then why tell the world government? What are you trying to accomplish by bringing them into the fold? The prospect that a Yonko of the Seas, one of the most powerful individuals in the world, had to go to the teacher, the Tattletale, and not do something himself is astonishing, especially considering he went to face, at the time, the strongest man in the world with no worries or qualms whatsoever. It's weird. In retrospect, if we read this new information with Shanks in mind, it alters things a bit. For instance, the Gorosei are speaking of Wano and Nico Robin, then we go away and come back, then they're speaking about this legend. Let's assume what was said off screen is that what Shanks came to warn us about, the power to do X, could possibly be contributing to this. I guess an easier way to say this is that Shanks came and he said this. What if that's the reason why all this is happening? Then we just follow the dialogue, and it seems like one of them believes him, one is on the fence, whilst the other is, well, disagreeing. There are quite a few individuals we could play this game with, but what I'll do here is give you an opportunity to make it into a video. Give me your top 5 possibilities of what the devil fruit they're talking about could be. The absolute best answers make it into the video as we attempt to figure out quite possibly the greatest mystery in One Piece in quite a while. I really don't want to completely undermine the other chapters and cliffhangers, but this could, again, quite possibly be the best ever, which gets even more props considering we're coming off of a break, then heading right back into one, and I'm not that bothered. Oda continues to show that he's a master of his craft, and even over 20 years in, he is still absolutely what the kids would say, a mad lad, and deserves as much rest as he wants. I, for one, am absolutely losing my mind with this chapter and can't wait to see what the community overall thinks and the wild possibilities. But now, guys, I am turning to you for you to give me your thoughts. How did you feel about this chapter? If you read it, what are your thoughts? What is the devil fruit? Leave it all below. Just go crazy. Again, this is one of the few times where you can say whatever and you will not sound crazy, because I've seen some out there theories and I'm just like, okay, it's not crazy, when it completely is. However, I said this in my live stream that I made, I'll link it below, before Blackbeard ate 2 devil fruits. The thought of that, because it would be going against the rules that were set in place by the story, we could not even fathom. So now, there's nothing wrong with thinking outside the box. And this chapter, this cliffhanger, lends itself to that. So guys, go crazy, leave your thoughts, make sure to like the video if you did, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, follow me on Twitter at BrogODAce, follow me on Instagram at BrogOD.ace. Thank you to my patrons, I appreciate you guys all so much. Again, guys, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
I start doubting me, I felt lost. I rewrite it.